If there's missionaries watching this in the future, I don't want others to be nervous or anything, but we would get arrested with fairly frequently. I was arrested like 5 times, and if my mission presidents are watching this, you didn't know about all those because I didn't want to get emergency transferred out. But usually I think it's one of 2 reasons that we were arrested. One, it's that we were American, and so it was presumed that we had lots of money relative to Indians generally. And individual police officers, a lot of the time, I think, wanted to get bribes so they could get some extra money. And they thought that white guys were kind of an easy target. That's the case, but we weren't allowed to give bribes. That's a rule the church has, I think, worldwide generally. And so, we would just threaten to. We didn't have cell phones when I was there, so we would just threaten to call the embassy a lot and pull out we had cards from the embassy with the seal on it and signed by the guy, but we didn't have a phone. So, our threats were very empty, but we would threaten to call the embassy a bunch and tell them we had rules, we weren't allowed to give money. And every time, eventually, when I was detained, I would just kind of be like quietly let go. Like after several hours every time for me. We had other elders who were in there for a couple days, and that was kind of a rare occurrence. That happened like 2 or 3 times on my mission, or it was kind of a big deal. But little arrests happened all the time, I think. And honestly, one thing for me is I was never scared at all about that stuff. I knew that what I was doing was right, and that's where I was supposed to be. I knew I wasn't violating any laws or anything. So the first was bribes. The second reason I think we get arrested is because sometimes there's Hindu nationalist parties, and they disagree with Gandhi. Gandhi, one of his big points was that India needed to become a secular country so that it could survive in these days without being overrun by other countries like Britain had at the time. And so Gandhi was instrumental in creating India as it is today. And a lot of Indians don't necessarily accept Gandhi's India. Before that, India was lots of kingdoms. There were Muslim kingdoms, there were Hindu kingdoms, and the Maharajas led the Hindu kingdoms, and sultans led the Muslim kingdoms. And a lot of people still feel that is how it should be, and a lot of them blame Gandhi for their poverty, and a lot of that's misplaced in a lot of ways. But sometimes you had police officers who were members of these Hindu nationalist parties, and they just wanted to cause problems so they believed that it should be a Hindu country, that no Muslims should be allowed to live there, no Christians should be allowed to live there. It should be a Hindu country, Hindu government. And a lot of these guys just wanted to cause problems with Christians. It never was really aimed at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or members of the church. It was always just their perception was causing problems with Christians in general. And I think because of the way we dressed and that we're an easily recognizable symbol of Christ as missionaries, that they'd cause problems with us and arrest us, and then they'd have news crews come, and it would be reported that these Christians were causing problems and things like that. And so that way, when I think this happened more right before elections in India, and that way, when election time came around, people would vote for these Hindu nationalists to get seats in the Indian government. And so those were kind of the 2 reasons that we were arrested. It was never like a personal thing, really. But there was also, at that time, not a lot we could do about it. I know the missionaries there now have cell phones, and so I think they just call the mission president right away, and the mission president always just gets members to go, and they can get it worked out pretty quickly. But there was a bit of a delay when I was there still. We just didn't have cell phones. We weren't allowed to have cell phones, and that changed about 6 weeks before I left my mission. They started handing out cell phones to the elders, and I actually never had one on my mission because they hadn't gotten to me where I was yet. But so as far as restrictions from the government, though, there aren't technically any restrictions put on us. I mean, sometimes individual government people would try to say there were, but there weren't. We're allowed to, I think that, well, I don't know if this was government or just kind of what had evolved as mission culture, but we didn't typically, as a rule, we felt like we weren't supposed to just knock on people's door unless someone had referred us to that house or something like that. We didn't just knock doors. We didn't need to. There's people everywhere in India to just talk to on the buses and everywhere. But we just felt, for some reason, we didn't knock on doors just as, we didn't just go and knock every door in every place. I think that was more because we didn't want to cause I think there had been some problems with some Muslims or something like that, and so we'd always try, if there was a door we wanted to knock for some reason, we'd always, like, because we didn't know Indian languages, and we were actually disobedient if we tried to learn local Indian languages. There's like 937 languages in India, and the church is only in English. But if we'd usually just find a guy on the street and just be like, hey, is this a house we can go to? And the guy'd be like, yeah. And we didn't know what he didn't know what we were talking about. We didn't know what he was talking about, but he'd point at the house, and we'd usually count that as a referral. And then we'd go knock on the door, and we were almost always invited in to talk to people. And people, especially in South India, people are very hospitable. They love having company over. They love to invite people over into their homes, and I think a lot of the time it helped that for when in the companionship there was an American, because people really wanted to have white people in their house. But even the Indians, I think, were always just really treated with respect by people generally, and